This is Robert Capuccio. Welcome to the Self-Help Antidote, a weekly dose of reason, perspective, and insight, where we challenge conventional thinking and explore authentic strategies and insights around personal transformation. Our commitment to you is to bring you some of the world's leading experts in the domains of fitness, wellness, coaching, and behavior change, separating fact from fallacy. Wow, Cam McDonald. You know,
Here we are.
This is an absolute, I'm not just saying this because you're a guest. Obviously, I can't say, oh, this next guest, not keen on him at all. I mean, that's not a really good start to a show, but I am truly excited to see you because we have not spoken in, wow, a while. Not even like a friendly fireside chat, have we?
We've threatened it. We've threatened a three-way between Tiffany Cook, yourself, and I a few times. Tiffany, we've been very enthusiastic about that, Tiff and I, but we've never put it together. But I'm thrilled to be back. Thrilled to be talking to you.
Thrilled to have you back. Tiffany reached out the other day. Little disclaimer to the listeners. If I do sound a bit much like a radio DJ doing the night shift, that is because I have a very sore throat. So I do sound a little bit different on this episode. But back with us is Dr. Cam McDonald. You know, there's a million different directions we could take this episode, but just as we were chatting before we hit the record button, I think there's something that is critical to talk about. And you had mentioned the work that you're doing, and I had mentioned that the work that I'm doing with people over here in the States, burnout is coming up quite frequently.
Yeah, it's huge out in Australia as well. It seems to be part of the cultures where we celebrate progression above all else, and it's there's a social symptom of I've got to do more. We've got to work together. Like both parents have got to work. We've both got to earn. We've both got to parent either side of that. We don't have time on the weekends, whatever it might be. It's a fascinating thing. It's not in all cultures, but it's most definitely in Australia, that's for sure. And the US, from what I'm hearing.
Well, that is the reality for, I would imagine, the majority of people. You know, life is hard. It seems like for a lot of people, it's getting harder and it requires a lot of mental, emotional, and physical energy. But what happens when you're hitting the accelerator and it feels like you're driving with one foot completely on the accelerator, the other one completely on the gas? And the harder you push, the slower you find yourself going. Maybe this would be a good time to just step back a little bit. When you say burnout, what exactly are we talking about scientifically? And what are we talking about in layman's terms?
Yep, that is a great question. So there's always going to be two things that I'm looking at with burnout. One is going to be the psychological symptoms, and the other is going to be the physiological symptoms. The physiological symptoms, though, haven't been described well because they look really different in different individuals. And so you can have someone in burnout who is pushing harder, thinking more, because that's their modus of operation. When they're tired, they try and just do more and be more productive, but they're spinning their wheels. Other people will completely crash, be on the couch and out. So behaviorally, it looks different. Physiologically, it looks different. But psychologically, it's been defined quite well. And there's some ones we can go through right now. The first one is an apathy or a lack of care, wanting to isolate, just not caring about things. I don't care about that. I don't have energy for it. I just prefer to be by myself. That's just what I want. So that's the first stage. It's sort of essentially an apathy and a lack of caring. And you can see that in with work. You might be really passionate about your work, and then all of a sudden you say, I just don't care about this job. Like I don't care about this customer service or whatever it might be.
It's not a lack of caring. It's a state of apathy in somebody who was likely quite passionate beforehand. So like a sudden
Potentially.
you find yourself apathetic more often.
Yeah. And a way that I normally explain it to people is I used to want to do this. Now I feel like I have to. It's that it's a obligated action rather than a passionate action. That's a nice. If you've been there in passion and you're not there right now, then there's probably some fatigue going on. Your body's saying, "Hey, I don't have as much energy for this anymore. Can you please stop?" And I'm going to start doing things that don't give you as much energy. So, and then a second criteria is depersonalization or becoming cynical. And the example that I use when I'm presenting to audiences is, when I was a clinician, I'd have back-to-back afternoons of clients, and I didn't know how to look after myself as well back then because I didn't understand the individual nuances of my body. And I found that I'd get really, really tired in the afternoon, and I would just wait for someone to cancel in the afternoon so that I could have 30 minutes break. And someone would ring up and say, "Hey, my dog's actually just died. I've got to go, take care of the whatever." I go, "Oh, thank God that dog died." It's a very depersonalized, it's a cynical way of looking at something that's quite tragic to say,
Detachment.
"Oh, exactly, detachment, precisely." So this is the one of the second criteria. Obviously, you're very familiar with these two, and then third is the feeling that you can never like the lack of self-reward is not there. The feeling that you'll never get a job done, the feeling of worthlessness is a thing that comes up as well. So I've got so much to do, I'll never get there, and even what I do, it's just not going to be good enough. So do you have the word for that, Bobby? Just to summarize it beautifully.
Well, when you put all these things together, it sounds like a really tragic Boxing Day, to be fair.
Yeah. It's bad. Yeah, you want to be left alone. You don't care. Even if you try and do something, you're just negative on yourself, and you're going to be very detached from the people around you. Absolutely. So that's the three criteria that I look at. That's in the literature. That's how they're looking at burnout. And there's a burnout inventory. Maslow, I believe, was responsible for that. There's
From
some other.
UC Berkeley, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, she's done
There's
some great work.
Yeah, she did. And so and that's a pretty good, those three things cover a whole lot. People really resonate with them. And then there's a physiological burnout as well, which is very, very interesting. And because people are so different, we'll see a different signature of that. So some individuals, and what we've found in the work that we're doing, obviously we're doing a whole lot in personalization and having a look at how different bodies respond to different environments. Some individuals they are highly parasympathetic individuals generally. So they have bigger, stronger bodies because the parasympathetic system produces more insulin, produces more growth factors, and they naturally have a bigger body. And when they go into exhaustion, their body essentially goes into freeze. If you're familiar with the Porges polyvagal theory at all, in the polyvagal theory, there's a few different states that you can be in, and one of them is a freeze. This is essentially where your metabolism just stops. And I calories in, calories out, correct, all of those types of things. But definitely we see people go into a behavior where they just look to accumulate mass. And they accumulate mass and then they sit on it. They are demotivated. They don't want to take action. And essentially, it's just conservation mode. And you'll see lower thyroid function. You'll see lower energy levels. Those energy levels are required for neurotransmitters. And you'll essentially have this just prolonged fatigue if I don't want to do anything. And their body is very, very stubborn and resistant to weight loss. They hold their weight very, very easily. Whereas other individuals, what we find, they can go into like autoimmune conditions is an outcome of this burnout. And the reason for that, some individuals have very high adrenal and cortisol output. And during the period of time when they are stressed but not yet burnt out, that huge outflow of energy and that essentially immune suffocating response. Adrenaline and cortisol essentially suppress your immune system. They say, "Oh, there's a tiger chasing me. I just need to keep running. I'm going to keep this adrenaline flowing. No, I'm not going to sort out my bacteria right now. I'm going to just get away from this tiger." what happens is that because their suppression of their immune system is so intense, what we see in some cases an accumulation of viral load, bacterial load around particular organs, and then when they finally do rest, they get a rebound of a huge immune response, and this is where they essentially start attacking their own body, because whether it be in some cases, for example, the individuals that I'm thinking about, Hashimoto's is often related to the body attacking the thyroid, but it's attacking viruses within the thyroid. And so it's because those viruses haven't been taken care of, because the body's been in stress and the immune system hasn't been working properly, they accumulate and then they get attacked as a foreign body. And this then obviously ruptures the thyroid gland and sends them into hypothyroidism, but for a different reason than somebody being metabolically suppressed due to hyperparasympathetic activity. And whereas another individual, so we've got this very, very different kind of stress profile of one just accumulating mass over time and then freezing and sitting on it. Another person spending this intense amount of energy being on for so long that they're not looking after their immune function then rebounding and sending them into some sort of sending them into a condition that's otherwise that fatigues them and has a whole lot of symptoms associated with it. And Hashimoto's is not the only outcome of that. It is one of the outcomes, and this is important, but autoimmunity is something that we see for those individuals. And for other individuals, they have such a drive to keep going. Their whole MO is I need to be productive. And it's related to methylation pathways, the way that they produce dopamine, their VTA area of their brain, which is goal-oriented behavior. And what we find is that
what is the VTA area of the brain for the listeners?
So the ventral tegmental area of the brain is the part that essentially helps you construct goals and drive towards goals, and it uses dopamine to do that as well. And some individuals have more sensitivity to dopamine in that area, and so are hyper goal driven. It's the type of person that works 70 hours a week, then goes for the 5-hour ride on the weekend on their sweet carbon fiber bike, tracking all of their data, comes home and has a list of jobs to do on the weekend because they need a goal. Like that sitting down and doing nothing actually feels very foreign to them.
And that's not just because of a psychological makeup.
No, this is it's related to the VTA, but it's also related to the fact that they have a thicker, and this is some of the work that we've done in Italy looking at cadavers. They have a thicker left branch of the sympathetic nervous system, which means that for any given output, they release more sympathetic outflow into their system, particularly noradrenaline, but also just they rely more on their sympathetic nervous system. So any given action, sympathetic nervous system is take action. And so you combine that with a goal-directed brain and a big outflow of sympathetic nervous system, you end up with a very intense goal-directed person. And that's just the way their body translates energy. Whereas another individual has a stronger input into their parasympathetic nervous system due to the way that those organs have developed as well. So they translate energy into parasympathetic energy. Some individuals translate it into sympathetic energy. So it's rest or activity, sympathetic being activity, parasympathetic being rest. So what we see in those individuals is that even in burnout, they still want to keep going. They still want to keep working, but they're spinning their wheels. And we also see that in order to maintain this very high energy, they actually have to bring calcium up because they have to release a whole lot of calcium out of their bones to keep their energy turning. Calcium is very, very important for ATP production and for just continuing to be in a high energy state. So we'll actually start seeing injury predisposition, calcification of tissues, stiffening of soft tissues, tendons, and fascial tissue, and their whole body becomes very, very rigid. So
wow,
it's very, very interesting.
You just described me over the past 5 years.
All right, there you go. Well, mate, we need a good stretch, and we need to dial some things back for you.
There's a picture you're painting when you go back to the psychological signs and consequences of burnout, where people are apathetic, cynical, detached, going back to Christina. Maslow's research talks about in the United States anyway, employee disengagement cost over half a billion. It's actually
Mm.
a little bit higher than that. It's like 550 billion a year. And one of the main causes of employee disengagement is burnout. And you keep reading more and more and hearing in conversations, well, people just don't care about anything. People just care about themselves, or they don't even care
Mm.
about themselves. They care about nothing. They don't want to work. In my generation, we wanted to work. People today don't want to work. And it's like, okay, that might be true for a portion of the population. But as I'm listening to you, the question that's in my mind is it possible that what we're witnessing is a burnout epidemic?
Definitely, we have a world that is set up for burnout. At least in the developed world, where capitalist environments, like, let's go back, I mean, not necessarily even capitalism, but it's how hard can I work, and I'm being rewarded for work, and I need to accrue cash, I need to buy a house, I need to make sure that I have wealth. All of that's going to come from lots and lots of work. And probably the thing that, and this is, I think, the crux of it, and even on, this is something, an example that you should be able to understand. Not you, Bobby, but everybody should understand. I mean, Bobby, you might be able to understand it. We'll see how we go. Um, and that is, let's say that you've got a problem that you've got to solve at work. All right, the burnt out brain, when it sees that problem, it's going to go, oh, I can't be bothered with that. I just don't want to deal with it. I'm overwhelmed. No, I can't take that on. Like, you'll do everything to blame and push away. And that's a strategy that allows you to alleviate burden. So the same thing happens with children as well. You see your kids at the end of the day, and they're not talking exactly as you like. And you go, oh, just go to your room. I don't want this noise. These people are unpredictable. I can't handle this. And you push it back. Now, that's a burnt out brain. I'm sure everyone's been there before. You spend all of your happy tickets on the people at work, and then your happy tickets are gone, and you walk home and you start shouting at the people you love. That's a classic example of being tired in that day. You then wake up, you have a really lovely breakfast, you've had a really good sleep the night before, you've moved your body gently, it just feels really, really great. You've gone into work, you've set your plan, you've been left alone for half an hour just to breathe, just to plan your day, to schedule it up. You've got everything sorted. You've sent off the emails that have been pestering you. Now someone comes along with that same problem again. You can literally have these 2 days back to back in some instances. If it's not fully proper blown out burnout, you can have a really tired day. You can have a really good sleep. You can have a really great day. Someone comes to you with that problem. You go, I'm on to this. Let's go. I'm ready. And you can have a completely different response. And this is what I want everybody to recognize, is that work is often not the problem. It is, there's two things that we can do as humans. We can take action, or we can rest and recover. That's it. We're taking action, or we're resting and recovering. It's just that we plan and we diarize everything in our day of how we're going to take action. No one diarizes their meditation. No one diarizes breathing. No one diarizes spend time with a person just to vent, to get things off my chest so that I can calm down. No one diarizes a quick walk around the park. No one diarizes their tea break, or their peppermint tea break at the end of the day. No one diarizes sleep. So we diarize everything that we've got to do, the action. We don't diarize any break. And essentially, life is, there's a beautiful guy, Hans Selye, depending on how you want to say his name, in the late 1900s, mid to late 1900s. He essentially came up with the general adaptation to stress. And he started to quantify the physiological signs of stress for the first time. A beautiful physiologist, fantastic guy. And he had a great quote, and that is, the only person who does not stress is already dead. Being alive is a stress. So stress is not bad. It's the accumulation of stress without recovery. If you have recovery, then you repair the stress. You think about a bone that breaks, the bone gets stronger on recovery, or at least it calcifies and is more dense when it recovers. If you stress something and then you recover it, you get stronger. The problem is that we are constantly planning our stress and we don't plan our recovery. We shortchange our recovery by staying up late on the weekends or by staying up late at night. We don't get our sleep, which is such an important part of this. But as soon as you get good sleep, as soon as you eat the right foods, as soon as you do the right kind of breathing, as soon as you do these things, all of a sudden your brain and your body start coming back into balance. And this is the problem with burnout, is that we have a world that focuses on the activities that you've got to do, not on the ones that are going to recover you. And it's that balance. Even if you keep everything the same in your life and you just increase recovery, you'll see an improvement in your health. And that's the piece that we don't talk about.
Burnout is largely in part related to recovery or lack of recovery.
I believe, yes, absolutely. And then there's another component of it as well, and that is we have natural strengths. We have a state of flow in the work that we do. There are some tasks that we flow in. There are some tasks that we don't. There are some jobs that just don't suit us at all. And when you're able to pick a job that matches your natural strengths, and these are now predictable through behavioral genetics and phenotype assessments that we do, you can understand, I'm going to be great at this job at this time in this way. And when I do it, I can get the job done, and it costs me a lot less energy because it's something that really suits who I am at the time when it suits my brain to do this. It's just like, so, and this is where if we have flow and recovery, this is where we're going to be seeing a much better profile of the health of an individual.
What do you mean by flow? I know we've all heard the word, but when
no,
you say
totally.
flow, what do you mean?
So for me, I mean, obviously flow is defined by a number of different teams as essentially a state where you're competent in an area. It's got a slight challenge associated with it. You lose track of time. There's immediate feedback saying you're on the right track or not, so that you can keep adjusting and stay there. But generally, the real experience of that, in my definition, is that you're completely absorbed in what you do. You're getting an incredible amount done, and time disappears. So you just feel like it's almost like you were born to do this. When I start defining flow, I like to expand it out a little bit, because if I go to bed at 9:45, I flow at sleep. Like, it is exactly the time that I need to go to bed to get the best sleep. And so I flow at sleep. Like, I crush sleep if I go to bed at 9:45. I went to bed at 12 o'clock on the weekend because I only allow myself to watch movies on one day. And I really wanted to finish this movie before the day was out. And so this is a new thing. And I went to bed at 12 and I slept crap. I did not flow at sleep. It was not a good achievement of sleep.
Well, I want to know this film. What's the film we should all look at?
No, it's so embarrassing. I'm not even going to mention it. Oh, it was a super cheesy rom-com. But a friend of mine from the States, she recommended it because she's in the States, I'm in Australia. It was Anyone But You. It's about this. It's a cheesy rom-com that bring people out to Australia, and they have a love story out here. Anyway,
I'm sure my wife has seen it. But
very good.
So you're touching upon something interesting, because I've also heard from speakers, and I don't know how much of this is based on biological expertise, or how much of this is based on opinion, but they were basically saying that a big cause of burnout is forgetting why you got into what you're doing in the first place. It's having a sense of purpose and a sense of vision. On the one hand, that's a little bit tone deaf to someone who's not getting recovery and they're in a toxic work culture. On the other hand, physiologically, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
How important is the ratio of flow versus recovery? Are they both equally important to keep us engaged and recovering at a level that helps to prevent burnout?
That's a great question. I believe in order to flow is still a very the flow that I was describing it is flow in all areas. And I'll just finish that quickly, because there's different times that our body likes to eat. And if you eat at those times, some people 2 to 3 meals a day, other people 5, you flow. There's different times where our body tolerates exercise better or not. Some people tolerate better in the morning, other people tolerate better in the afternoon, some people in the middle of the day, some people different types of exercise. You do the right kind of exercise at the right time, it feels better, you get better results, you're flowing. If you love spreadsheets, and you get to use a spreadsheet, you'll flow if it's at the right time, if you're not being interrupted. Some
You
people
just
love being
lost me
in
there.
it. So, but what's really important when we're normally talking about flow, we're talking about hyper productivity, being in that space where we are totally dialed in. It's an incredibly expensive state still. You still you still have to use a whole lot of your brain power, and there goes a whole lot of energy into using that brain power as well. It can create fatigue. You can go longer because you're in the flow, but the recovery is still absolutely mandatory for that. You can't hold this flow state nonstop. A lot of the flow state recovery when it started, or the flow state when they were looking at it, was in extreme sports where people go into an embodied state of movement where they're not thinking anymore. They're just in the movement in a theta wave state and crushing it. They would go for very short periods of time. Then you hear about people just saying, I worked all night because I got into the flow with my book. But then they definitely need recovery the next day. You can't miss a night of sleep with flow and just think, oh no, it's all magically gone. So you still have to have a spine of recovery. You have to have sleep. You have to have food at the right time. You have to move your body. You have to breathe and meditate. You have to socially connect in the way that's appropriate for you. Some people that's a lot more. Some people that's a lot less. And what you were saying there about purpose, I like to think of purpose as part of the resilience toolkit. So the first thing with resilience that I like to think about is resilience builds, like the RES of resilience, RES of rest. Resilience increases if you rest. So just think about your resilience at the end of the night and your resilience in the morning. All that's different is a sleep. And your resilience is very different because you've been able to accumulate essentially more buffer before you get tired again. So there's a physical component of resilience. Your energy levels are better. Even the hormones that are provided to your body, you're more resilient and tougher as the day, in the earlier part of the day or the afternoon compared to the middle of the night when you're being woken up, when you're unrested. But then there's a psychological component of resilience as well. And I feel that purpose is like an energy sump. It's if you have purpose, you've got something to give you more energy, which allows you then to be more resilient. It allows you to tap into an energetically tougher mindset, which costs energy. So the way I like to think about purpose is, I'm crossing the road. I've just broken my leg and my kid is about to be run over by a car. My purpose is so high at that point. I can run on my broken leg or hop really fast, whatever I've got to do. I'll pick that child up and I'll run to the other side of the road because I have purpose. It gives you an incredible amount of drive. And if you are passionate about, I want to change the world, I want to do this, or I love what we're doing, I love the impact we're having on people, whatever it might be, if there is a purpose and a passion in that, it's going to give you energy. And that I feel almost sits in the same bucket as rest and recovery. Like reconnecting with purpose is a very energizing thing. Yep. And for me, it's like physical rest in my frame of resilience. Then what I also find that people need is, particularly for the resilient mindset, which then supports sort of how you manage yourself in many ways when it comes to burnout, is, do I have a belief system that allows me to overcome anything that comes up in my life? So everyone can have one of these. Some people who are Christians, so God might be, well, God's put this in front of me for a purpose. So it doesn't matter what it is. It's like God's ordained this, so this is going to be a great thing. Okay, so this is whatever it is, I'm going to manage it, and this is part of my path. Other individuals that are more alternative, yep, the universe, this is all conspired to be in front of me right now. There's a beautiful silver lining in this. Even atheists can say, we've only got one life. We may as well solve this problem and have a great life. It actually doesn't matter what your belief system is. If you have a belief system that allows you to see any tragedy with a silver lining, that's going to be a very important part of your resilience toolkit as well.
Oh, wow. So when somebody says, well, everything happens for a reason, I hope that's something they say to themselves and not somebody else when they're going through tragedy, because that's obnoxious.
Yeah.
But even if that's completely not true, no, things happen randomly for no discernible explanation whatsoever. the person that's like, this is tragic, life is so random, will lack resilience compared to the person who looks at the same thing or experiences the same thing and says, well, everything happens for a reason. And there is a reason here that will be revealed if I am open to sitting in what this lesson is.
So I just want to nuance that because it's important to say this is tragic and this is really bad can be a very, very important part of the grieving process. But even sitting in that space of I've got to go through the feeling of this being tragic and then I'm going to move into the next phase, having a higher order of thought process. Essentially, it's mindfulness. It is how is my body and mind responding to this? And the number one treatment is for burnout is mindfulness. So as far as preventing burnout and supporting burnout, all the literature is indicating that the more mindful you are, the better off you're going to be. And so what it allows you to do, it allows you to step outside yourself and observe. And if people get like, for example, let's say we're talking David Goggins, and he said, this is tragic, he would take fuel from that, right? He would say, right, this is even more reason why I can be stronger and better and faster and do more hard stuff. I want it to be as tragic as possible because that's where I get my juice from. But even still, that's a positive frame. That's still a mindful frame on what's happening as well. So anything that allows you to not be sitting in your emotion, but rather be observing what you're experiencing, it creates that separation and allows you to not be as engaged and do more productive things with it as well. So this is just part of the little toolkit that I'm talking to organizations about.
No, I think that's very important. And by the way, thank you, because saying this is tragic and what exactly am I feeling as a result of this is a very good way of not only acknowledging your feelings, but mitigating the intensity of emotions that can keep you stuck. So that was important to mention. So what do we do with you? You have two types of people: one who shuts down in the face of burnout, the other one who just continually keeps driving, albeit with less and less effectiveness. Where does this all lead? Like, where does this all go? Life seems to be speeding up, not slowing down.
Yes. Yes. So what's the question? Is it like, what do we do specifically for those individuals or?
What do we do individually, and what do we do as a society? What do we do with our
Yeah.
employees?
Okay. So, so individually, I'll give those two examples. Essentially, for the person that has the over parasympathetic body or the hyper parasympathetic body that accumulates mass and then freezes and then just sits, they have very little motivation for things. What we need to do is we need to pull them out of freeze. And the way that we can do that is by reducing their parasympathetics as much as possible because they are over parasympathized, which is over rested, over calm, over digesting, over insulin producing. And so we fast them for a couple of days. And when you fast them, while they're trying to be in conservation, when you fast, you start activating sympathetics because you start getting into action. You go, where's all my food? And what's interesting behaviorally, what we'll see is that they start getting agitated again. And that's a good sign because it means that their fight is back. But before then, when they're in complete rest or stage 3 burnout, what they'll experience is no fight and just, oh, that's fine. I just don't want to do anything. I'm not motivated. You fast them for a couple of days and you'll start to see their lights come back on. It increases their sympathetic drive. It releases a little bit more noradrenaline and they're like, oh, I don't like this. I'm a little bit agitated. That's a really, really good sign for this individual. It means they're coming back into the fight. The fight happens before the burnout. So they're actually de-escalating where they are. Whereas the other individual that's very much running on their nervous system. So it's the strong sympathetic outflow with the high dopamine sensitivity. What we need to do for them is we need to exhaust their nervous system. So because they're running, so what we might do is it's a very strange recommendation, but it's been incredibly effective. You put them on a wobble board. Everyone's seen one of those wobble boards where you try and stand with your ankle and it's got a ball on it. So it's essentially a very hard thing to balance on. And you stand them on there for about 10 minutes. That's a long, long time. And so it's one foot for 5 minutes, the other foot for 5 minutes. And what it's going to neurally exhaust them because there's so much nervous system activity that's required for the proprioception of that. We need to fatigue the thing that it keeps going. And then once we fatigue it, then it can recover. And then we can sort of reset the system a little bit as well. I know it's a very, very small example. There are other things that we do with food, but this is where I probably wanted to just make the point that two different people in burnout need completely different things because they look completely different in burnout. And this is one of the confusing components of it. Yeah.
Ever, but I'm one of those sympathetically driven individuals.
Yeah.
I will go, and eventually, like right now, I will get sick, which is very rare. But when it hits hard.
Mm.
After I'm sick, I feel like, like when you have a computer issue and you go to IT and they're like shut down, reboot, I feel amazing after I'm sick.
Yeah.
Not just physically, but mentally, I feel like my brain is 10 years younger. Is that why?
Well, that's
happening. Is that one of the
exactly?
reasons?
Well, I mean, think about this. People think getting sick means that you're burnt out. It does, but it's also the recovery that you've been missing. This is the thing. So we've got this beautiful principle called supercompensation in exercise physiology, where if you exercise and challenge yourself a good amount, the Goldilocks amount, then you're going to get fatigued, but then you're going to recover stronger. And that's the beautiful response of, I've fatigued myself, I've damaged some muscle tissue, my muscles are going to come back stronger. That's supercompensation, is that you get stronger than when you started. If you overstress yourself, like an ultra marathon, it can take you a few weeks to just get back up to where you started at the start of the race. And this is when you're overstressing your system. The same thing goes when we're looking at burnout. So if you, and this is something that I've actually started employing a lot more in recent years, as I've been talking a lot more about this from a personalized perspective. If you take small breaks throughout the day, you wash off a whole lot of the stress accumulation, for lack of a better term, regularly. And so you get to the end of the day and you're a lot less tired, and then you get a good sleep. And all of a sudden, your body's back to where it was, even maybe better than the day that it was before, because you've stressed, recovered, stressed, recovered, stressed, recovered. It's about the fast cycling of stress and recovery. And it could be, this is why meals are very important for people, because it makes you parasympathetic. It takes you out of action, puts you into recovery. Now, if you don't do those things and you're a little bit underslept and you're not having the meals that you should, or you're drinking a little bit of extra coffee just to stay awake, or you're just burning the candle at both ends, which is, waking up a bit earlier, going to bed a bit later with work, you're socializing on the weekends, whatever it might be, your body doesn't get a chance to recover, but it goes, no problem, Bobby, I've got you back here. I'm just going to, when you get your next little rest period, like when the work winds down a little bit, that's when I'll take care of it. Because obviously what you're doing right now is really important. So I'm going to give you all of the cortisol and adrenaline and all of the things that you need right now, because obviously this is very important to us and we need to keep going. This is your body speaking right now. And then let's say that you've done like 3 months of hard work and you're about to go on holidays. Your body knows this. Your mind knows this. And it goes, oh, see that little island up there of rest? I'm going to use that because you haven't been resting me at all. I'm going to make sure that we get one big dose of rest. And so I just need you to lie down for 10 days because that's the amount of time that I need to recover. All of this bacteria that I haven't been addressing, all of these viruses, the fatigue in your energy systems. I just need probably a week on your back just to really, really sort that out. In the meantime, I'm going to make it so that it's really easy for you to do that. I'm going to fill your sinuses full of snot. I'm going to start attacking everything. So what you need to know is that you being sick is when your body is actually resting and recovering. That's what your body does in resting and recovery. So people think being sick is bad. I mean, if you're chronically sick, bad. However, if you get sick, it means your body is actually fighting, because some people will put off that bug because they're under so much stress, it suppresses their immune system. The way to think about this is if you take care of your rest, if you proactively rest, you will get stronger and smarter, because that's what happens when you sleep well. That's what happens when you meditate. That's what happens when you exercise and then recover. Your muscles get bigger and stronger, or fitter and faster, and your brain learns things better in sleep. So if you plan your recovery, you get smarter and stronger, growth and insight. If you don't plan your recovery, no worries. You'll just be forced into it through fatigue and breakdown. So both situations are giving you recovery. One's on your terms, one is not. And so at the end of your illness, this is getting back to, I know this is a very long way of answering your question, or answering your statement. Essentially, when you finally get that chance to rest and recover and you've been sick, that's the recovery that your body has needed. You've needed to get rid of that bacteria. You've needed to get rid of that virus. You've needed to have that rest period, and your body needed to force you into a place where you couldn't be active anymore. It's a safety mechanism so that we don't die. Recover this, otherwise you get full of bacteria. So I'm hoping that made sense. But essentially, if you take care of your rest, you'll get stronger and you'll get smarter. If you don't, your body will take care of it and you'll be fatigued and you'll be a little bit broken. But then after it, if you allow yourself that recovery, you'll come back at least back to square. And then it may clarify you and allow you a bit more motivation to really get stuck into it as well.
That does make sense. What really made sense, the words that I noticed were, you will get stronger and smarter. Not too long ago, I responded to a thread by talking about the importance of taking breaks for a lot of the same reasons we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
And someone who is a friend of mine, who's also a speaker in the fitness industry, interestingly enough, had said, this individual said, well, when you have when you have goals that are important to you, it's hard not to work 7 days a week and constantly go. And you had said something in the beginning of the show where, in a capitalist society, you are rewarded for what is a lot of work. And I just want to introduce the distinction. A lot of work is what's required, but it's not really what you're rewarded for. You're rewarded for value. You're rewarded for the output, which is interesting because if you've got to go, especially like with the emergence of AI and so many of the things that we do that were within the domain of human skills, knowledge work, that could go away very soon. So that energy that you need for human to human connection and innovation, you can't afford to put that in first gear. So if you don't take breaks, you basically destroy the level of value that you need to live in the first place. So it's like, oh my God, I can't take a break. I've got to be productive. No, you can't afford not to take breaks because
Right.
you must be productive, increasingly so.
Yeah.
One question I have is, you brought up stage 3, burnout. What are the stages of burnout so someone could recognize themselves within it if they happen to be there?
Very good. Yeah. So I actually mixed up some nomenclature with that. So not mixed it up, but I was referencing a big assumed knowledge piece. So I'll just go through what I meant by that. So in Hans Selye's general adaptation to stress model, and it's been revalidated by other individuals as well, there is 4 stages. Homeostasis, which is essentially when you wake up first thing in the morning, you're nice, calm, and rested. Stage 1 is, oh my God, I'm late for an appointment, and your nervous system turns on. So there's nervous energy. It's when you're thinking through details. If you're in planning mode, you're in stage 1 stress. It's like at the start of an 800-meter race. So you haven't actually started running yet. You're just thinking about how you're going to run it. It's nervous system activity. Stage 2 is then essentially the fight or resistance stage, which is your cortisol response. So I'm 500 meters through this 800-meter race, and I hate myself. This is awesome, awful, but I have to keep going. It's 4:00 in the afternoon. I'm tired. I've over-caffeinated. I'm feeling awful. I've got to push through. So that stage 2 is where your immune system suppresses. It's where your blood pressure goes up, blood sugar levels go up, and it's all designed for, how can I get through this state of activity, have fuel, have blood flow. It's very, very important. Stage 3 is then recovery. There's an early stage, and recovery is sleep, but it's also illness where your immune system comes back on and things. But stage 3 looks very, very different for different people. It can be that hyperproductive wheel spinning space where they're calcifying their tissues. That can be stage 3 for one person. It can be sitting on a couch doing nothing. And there's an early stage 2 and a late stage 2. Early stage 2 is, I'm in the fight and I'm loving it. Late stage 2 is I'm in the fight and I'm just tired, but I've got to keep
Exhaustion.
going.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll have these 3 stages. Generally, we'll see burnout if someone's been spending too long in stage 2, they must go into stage 3. This is the thing. The world or the life is about cycling through these stages quickly. And it's when you are prolonged in one stage, that's when there's going to be an imbalance.
Thank you for that. So I know there's probably somebody listening to this going, oh, yeah, work breaks into your day, take time. It's like, yeah, the second I get up, it's like I have screaming kids that they get up. And it's like nothing that I do is up to me until I leave
Yes.
the house. And then
Yes.
it really kicks off after that.
Yeah.
But if I'm an employer, this becomes a massive problem. Going back to Maslow's research, she said that at any given time, 10 to 15% of your workforce will be experiencing burnout. And she says the cost of, if you have a 10,000 person organization and 15% of the people are experiencing burnout, that's about 26 million a year in productivity, employee absenteeism, all those associated costs. Now, if you have to replace that employee, wow, that gets way more expensive. And here's what's scary. She says upwards of 50% of the population is on their way to burnout. So I would imagine if I was a boss and productivity is important to me, that I would start to integrate these things into my culture. It's almost, even if you are the worst leader ever and you couldn't give a toss about any of your employees' well-being, the most pragmatic, performance-based strategy would be to take good care of them. What are some recommendations? What have you seen people doing within the workplace?
Yeah. Well, this is an incredible amount of focus for us. And the first and most important thing is the outcome is you have to get people to do it. The second thing is you have to do the right thing for the individual when they do it. So, and the first thing you have to do is understand, how is this person different? So this is what we're doing essentially, is we're quantifying that difference very accurately to say, what is the way that your body needs recovery? What is the way that your body is going to get into flow better? What's the way that you're going to build resilience? And essentially, how do you need that language to you? So I'll just go through a few examples of what it might look like when it's personalized. You've got so as an organization, you have to normalize the idea that we are better when we're recovered. That's very, very important. So you have to normalize that. And for some people, lying on your back for 15 minutes completely recovers them at the middle of the day. If they have a really busy morning, they have 15 minutes lying down. When you lie supine, it turns off your adrenals, or the signal for your adrenals to be firing. And for some people that are very adrenalized, that they go, go, go all day, they're up at the first in the morning and they're fired up and they're getting hungry if they don't eat, all of that kind of stuff. If they lie down flat on their back after lunch, it's like the whole day starts again. It's like a brand new 4 or 5 hour day after, or 6 hour day, whatever it might be after lunch. So 15 minutes of lying on their back, it's not socially acceptable to do that, but you've got to make it socially acceptable to do that. Mm-hmm. Then we have another individual that they get so much out of it if they go for a social walk between 2 and 3 p.m. And if you say, hey, we're going to have and you wouldn't say, hey, it's burnout watch time. You go, hey, we're going to get the girl group together and do a hot girl walk or whatever it might be. But we're going to do it together, because when they get to verbalize, they get social connection, but they also get to move their body, which physiologically certain bodies must move in the afternoon. If they don't, they get agitated. And so them, by going out for a walk and just being able to talk and vent, they come back in completely refreshed. They've had that break. Another individual, though, they need to be surrounded by people that are low maintenance. So if there's some individuals that are so nurturing, there are some people that are so nurturing and protective of the people around them that they are constantly worried about them. They've got this natural selfless affect of, I need to look after you at all times. As soon as someone who is low maintenance gets to spend time with them, they go, oh, I don't have to look after you. I can calm down. That is a huge recovery agent for them. But if they're constantly worried about their family, they never get to stop. They're constantly in stage 2. And this is the person that accumulates mass and then freezes. So they actually need some time either by themselves, or they need some low maintenance people where they can just get the chill over lunch, whatever it might be. Another individual is in no way interested in reducing their productivity, and to be told that, oh, you need to take some time out to be more mindful, they go, no, I'm not going to do that. You just say, well, what the kind of motivation would be is like, I'm going to give you points. I might even give you a bonus, like a monetary reward, if you can accumulate 15 minutes of mindful activity in your day with your heart rate or your heart rate variability in at this level of parasympathetic activity. And what that does for their brain is, oh, I can track that. That's a metric. That metric equals health. That metric equals money. That makes sense for me to do that. No, I'm not going to go for
recovery competitive.
Exactly. And objective and measurable and trackable. And so this is where the language of it has to be so different. It's like, hey, you've got your performance moments that you need to do. You've got 15 of them to do today. You've got to do that. And it's like, hey, you need to go and have lunch, or you need to spend some time with family. Hey, you need to go for your hot girl walk. Hey, you need to, like, it's lie down time for these individuals, like go and get your 15 minutes in now. And this is the thing where we can go into this as in a greater, not just a workplace, but a society. It's when you have an understanding that people need certain things and people are doing certain things for the betterment of themselves and others, that level of acceptance then makes it much easier for people to engage with it as well. But different people need it in different ways.
You know, I think as someone who is working in the space that you're working in right now, as someone who has worked in the space that you used to work in, like fitness, I think we're both moving into more well-being over the past few years. What you just said is so critical, because even in the fitness industry, when you would start to speak to certain, not all, certain executives about what now we would classify as well-being practices for their staff in order to elicit greater performance and take care of your people, right? They would be like, no, thanks. That's nice to do, but we have targets to hit. So even in some places in the fitness industry, they didn't believe well-being was worth it. And I don't think it's because they didn't believe in well-being practices. I think it's because they themselves might have been experiencing burnout, highly reactive, and we might not have been using the languaging that they resonate with. The thing I got out of what you just said, because I think it's what so many wellness professionals struggle with, is nobody's going to argue that well-being is not important. But when someone has an issue day to day that they regard as urgent, and you meet what's urgent by talking about what's important in your languaging, it's a threat. It actually drives them more into a sympathetic response, because like, no, you don't understand. My career, my survival, my house is based on this, and this is urgent. I know that's important, but can we do that next year? And so you have to individualize, and you have to understand how people structure language and what impact that has emotionally. Because if you're not meeting them with the same language that they're utilizing, you're probably not going to break through.
Exactly. And this is the powerful part of language actually relating to biology. And a person has a biological mandate to achieve certain things. Their body's trying to do a certain thing subconsciously. And if you can speak to that language of, that person that has the naturally higher dopamine drive with a sympathetic output, naturally they want to achieve stuff. So if you can be talking about recovery as achievement, it's like their whole body just understands it. Whereas if you talk to somebody about, hey, you've got to go out and move your body and have a bit of a chat, this very oxytocin combined with adrenal, musculoskeletally dominant person, it's all about movement and connection. It's like, oh, that makes so much sense to me, to move and connect. Whereas that just seems like such a waste of time for the first person. It's like, no, I'm not going to go out for a walk in a gas bag. Like that makes no sense. And so it's about speaking the language of a person's biology. And that's we've been spending the last couple of decades figuring out how does a person's biology play out behaviorally, and how then can you speak to that to make them feel like they can be themselves. And probably I would say one of the most important things that we can do at work is be educated and understand the people that we're working with and support them to be themselves. This is where, and I'm going on a slight tangent. It's more of a, not a tangent, but
I like this.
An addition to this. Yeah. It's if probably one of the most relieving things, and is to be hanging out with your best friend who just loves you no matter what. It's just so calming. Like you don't have to be anywhere. You don't have to be anyone. You just, who you are is wonderful. That when I do this in big audiences and I get them to think about the person that just makes them feel like themselves, the exact same words that describe a 5-minute mindful breathing session are used when describing the feeling of spending time with that best friend. When you're able to be yourself, you don't have cortisol, you don't have adrenaline, you have just you, and you can feel yourself. That's what mindfulness allows you to do. So one of the questions that came up was, how do I know if I'm burnt out or whatever it may be? You can only determine that if you have a mindful moment when you can actually experience, oh man, I'm really tired, or geez, I'm really burnt out. You don't feel tired when you're on. This is because hormones are protecting you from feeling that so that you can be on. So one of the most important things with workplaces is, if I know that Bobby, hey, he needs that 15-minute lie down, he needs the time away from technology, he needs the whatever it might be, and I need this. And oh, Bobby, I love how your energy is so high when you're on. Man, it's really important. How about you go have your 15-minute? Are you ready? Like, because it's later on in the day. Do you need a snack before we start this next meeting? Because I know you do better when you eat. Versus, I don't need a snack. I've actually just eaten. Can you give me a few moments to digest? Because I'm a little bit slower after I ate. Whatever. Different people, different things. People start going. Even the time of day. You've got night owls and early birds. Night owls are terrible in the morning. And if you say, "Hey, I know that you're not great in the morning. Can we do this conversation later?" They're going to say, "Thank you so much for letting me be me." And it's not normally this. It's all of those examples are about, I see you, I recognize you, I want you to be in great performance. I know what that is. I'm going to encourage you to do it. Just be you.
Well,
And
that by itself,
that is what it's all about.
Being in an environment where people care and invested in one another will lower your stress response and work
Absolutely.
to stave off things like burnout. I mean, all the things that come out of that around individualizing what causes you to be the best version of yourself are critically important, but not to discount the environment and the impact that alone would have. I mean, could you imagine?
Absolutely.
I think it's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say they stack, and they it's 1 + 1 = 7 with those. If you've got a caring environment, and then you've got a knowledgeable, caring environment, I actually know what words to say to make you feel more like you. Because otherwise, I walk around and say, "Hey, let's get our performance minutes in," to a person who's a non-performance time. The intention is, I want to care for you. You need to do the same thing as me. But it's that's not me. Like I get the performance bit. We're going to have some rest, but that doesn't match. And so it's the stacking of those two things, the intention and the knowledge to do both.
And adaptability within your culture. I know a few years ago, we were forced to relook at how we engage with work, right? So we had something pretty significant happen across the world to pretty much everybody. But what's coming out of it now is you'll see things where it's like it's either back to the office or everyone works at home, and people argue about the merits of both. And then, like right now, our video cameras on, and a lot of meetings during the day. I keep hearing this from people. It's like these meetings are so much more exhausting than face-to-face meetings. And can I just turn my camera off? And in some organizations, well, that's considered very rude. And I think in certain meetings it is. But what are the meetings where I can turn my camera off and have a walking meeting? so I can get some movement in
Yes.
nature and engage in the actual conversation that I'm supposed to be focused on having. I
Mm,
think we need to start re-examining things again and not get too dogmatic that it's either this or that.
mhm,
Sometimes it's, I hate to say this, but yes, and
mhm. Yes, indeed. Yep. It's this um and what I've found is that informing people about their differences can be very relieving as well. So it coming from a space of, oh, you are different to me. I was just annoyed at you before, but now I get it. Like that understanding that, oh, this person's different. They're going to need something different. And that's what we're often, I leave a lot of the talks that I do is to say, hey, we've been through a fair bit of stuff about how people are different. But if you just assume that no one thinks like you, that everybody needs something slightly different to you, they need it communicated in a different way. If you have that assumption, then you're starting from the right place because you're going to come in with more curiosity as to what's going to support this person. And curiosity is another way to get to mindfulness. And just to bring it into physiology for a second, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about the state of appreciation and mindfulness is reflected in your heart rhythm, in your heart rate variability versus frustration and anger. There's a different heart rate variability that associate with different emotions. And what's really fascinating is that when you get a group en masse experiencing appreciation and gratitude, that if there are people in the room that aren't aware of this activity, their heart rhythm will actually shift to mirror the rest of the group.
mm,
And this is where this is not this is very measurable electromagnetic fields that are coming off your heart, and it's you'll know when you are in sync with somebody, that you're in a conversation, that you're on rapport. That happens at a group level as well, and that if you have a group of people that are sitting in a space where they feel like they can be themselves, they're doing things at the right time, they're doing things in the right way for them, everybody will be, more people will be in a state of calm. You have that in a meeting, and you'll have the people that are otherwise agitated, they'll feel more calm as they walk out of the meeting because they've got actually an influence, an electromagnetic input that's coming into their body and telling their heart to beat in a different way to match up with this group. Whereas if you have a very stressed group, those heart rhythms will influence the calm people in the office and actually make those people stressed as well. So we have heart rate variability is one of the best markers for looking at state of stress, and it is infectious. The state that we have in our heart will influence the people around us. It's fascinating work.
wow, that is fascinating. You know, in a society that is becoming increasingly intolerant to anyone who thinks even slightly different than I do, not me, but me being us, we. Um,
Yeah.
i- from a pragmatic perspective, the most
Mhm.
valuable person in your life, especially your work, could be someone who thinks very differently. Tomorrow, I have a
Mm.
meeting with a data analyst. She has opposite skill sets, sees
Yes.
the world from a completely different lens. I could not survive if she was not that good at her job. And it's
Yes.
like that appreciation is not only practical because it allows us to merge and synergize skills towards a common outcome, but you're saying it actually helps our experience of the world and our overall health.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, exactly. And a better heart rate variability is associated with the prevention of chronic disease. And but what I would say on what you just said then too was um, when you can sit back and know that someone is amazing at what they do that's different to you, and just be in awe and appreciation of that, it's so different to the highly strung, panicked mental state of I need to be able to do everything, otherwise I'm not of value. And this is often what we have as well. People sit in this space of, no, no, I can do that. No, no, I can do this. We don't ask for help. We don't honor the other person's strengths. We take on so much load. We work out of our flow because we're doing things that aren't particularly good, we're particularly good at. And so it's just a much greater grind, and flow requires competence. So if you want to get people into flow, you actually have to honor the strengths in other people. To do that, you have to go into appreciation. And then even if you tell them, you are just amazing at doing this, their response is going to be, can't everybody do this? You go, no, you are amazing at it. And what happens is that they walk away from that workday thinking, I can just be who I am and celebrated for it. But because we're also worried about our own performance, we don't actually have an opportunity where we can celebrate somebody's other strengths and say, you are so, so good at this. I so appreciate you for bringing this to the table. And this is an exercise that I run. I'm giving away all of my secrets here, but I love it. I'm with you, Bobby. As part of a workshop, it'll be, I want you to find a strength in somebody that you love and tell them. And in order to do that, you have to be mindful about yourself. You have to be mindful and curious about them. You have to be in a state of appreciation. And then you get an oxytocin burst from telling them. They feel amazing and validated just being who they are. You walk away from the day thinking, who I am is enough. And that is the opposite of burnout, as opposed to no matter what I do, I'm worthless. That's a burnout symptom. Who I am, just being, the thing that is natural to me is enough. These are the types of interactions that we can have that will eliminate burnout.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's great being back on with you, Cam.
It's great being here, man. And even under the weather, man, you never fail to disappoint.
Well, hopefully we will get you back soon. Thank you all for listening.
You never disappoint, not fail to disappoint. Sorry about that. Sorry. You're amazing, Bobby, is what I meant to say. Oh, God, it's 6:30 a.m. here.
You're amazing as well, Cam.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Visit us at theselfhelpantidote.com to share your feedback, insights, and recommendations on what topics you'd like us to explore in the future.